Alright YouTube, so the inspiration for this vlog comes from a cool Pokemon meme I saw of middle stage evolutions that the meme creator thought are even cooler than the final evolution, and I'll display the image below, or above rather, or let me just display the image. And honestly, I completely agree. I really like all these Pokemon, especially Duwat, because he was one of my favorite middle stage evolutions for a long time, and he was one of the first middle stage evolutions that really stood out to me as like a kid when I was like 12. And Bayleaf was actually my very first favorite Pokemon back in like 2008, 2009, whatever year it was. But point is, when I first saw Bayleaf in the anime, I thought it was so cool and really stood out to me. As I saw more Pokemon, eventually sort of Bayleaf was not my favorite Pokemon even as a little kid, but it still has a lot of nostalgia attached to it, even though I don't draw it often. But it's just a little cool story too. And the Grass Cat I know is a middle stage evolution, but I'm not terribly familiar with this Pokemon, as although I'm getting a Pokédex very soon to catch up on my knowledge of Pokemon, I admit I kind of faded out a little from Gen 7 onwards, but I do really like its pre-evolution and final evolution, and it looks like a really cool evolution line, so that would definitely be a great Pokemon for a Pokemon movie, which is definitely the theme of this vlog. And of course, we can't forget Rhydon, who is the first Pokemon created, although Bulbasaur is the first one in the Pokédex, but Rhydon's of course an iconic Pokemon that I respect due to him being the very first Pokemon that was created. And Seadra, of course, is a cool guardian of the sea, you know, not as powerful as its evolution Kingdra, but a water-like dragon starfish Pokemon nonetheless, with a cannon for a mouth, which is so cool. And of course, Togetic. I love Togekiss, maybe even more than Togetic, but Togetic is super cute, and honestly, that evolution line is perfect, so, you know, no complaints. But yeah, I'm not going to talk about the final evolutions too much, so let me just show this recap drawing of the image that I drew for this movie pitch. This is a really cool team, and it's going to be talked about today in my Pokemon Underdog Team Up movie pitch vlog. So let's get started. So to start, I would either make Duwat or, where is he? Rhydon the leader, for one reason. Duwat, you know, sort of has, I don't know, kind of screams leader compared to the rest of these, as he's just like sort of a ninja-ish, samurai-like Pokemon. But Rhydon, of course, being the first created Pokemon, I kind of want to give him this status of the mini leader, but it's sort of similar to Thunderbolts or the New Avengers of Marvel, as this is, you know, not a full-fledged super powerful Pokemon team, but that makes it more cool and creative, especially with the underdog Bayleaf and Togetic. So sort of it would be some of the slightly awkward Pokemon, and yes, that's a Batman tattoo on my arm. I already showed it in a vlog, so I'm not showing it in this one, but anyways, I think a theme of Detective Pikachu could be super cool, because one thing, although I did like Detective Pikachu, that I wasn't incredibly fond of, is I feel like there's a lot more to explore, which this vlog and movie pitch will definitely do, as I will show some other Pokemon drawings I made for the villains that these 6 heroes will be taking on. So it starts out on this mountain of Pokeball where these 6 Pokemon all meet together for an experiment, but they later realize they're being used and pinned against each other, similar to the Suicide Squad and Thunderbolts, but they realize and feel like they are expendable characters, which gives us a lot of depth behind the characters as they look up to their final evolutions, but feel like they're living in the shadows when, ironically, they're much cooler, and most of them are much cooler than their final stages. So after that, we meet a little bit of Gengar, but Gengar might be a little too devious and devilish and powerful for these guys, but part of the theme is because, although I'll be honest, the reason I don't want Gengar as the villain is because I want to make my own separate Gengar movie, which I've talked about a little bit, because we're going to save Gengar for later. But you know who we're not going to save for later? Chikorita. We will see little mini flashbacks and mini clips of the Pokemon's pre-evolution first stage and their final evolutions, but the main focus is on the middle evolutions, but you can't get the middle without the first one, and of course, they look up to their final evolutions, and that'll sort of be explained at the end about what they do with their final evolutions. So the first scene starts out with all those Pokemon meeting together, and once they realize they're being pinned against each other and forced to kill each other off, they realize they're being played and they need to assemble together and make a team, so they call themselves the Poke Squad, because I can't think of anything more creative. I can, but I don't want to reveal it just yet. I'll save that for second part vlog. But in that lab rather, there's some evil Greninjas. Some of them are big and much bigger and stronger than the other Greninjas, which is very discouraging to them, especially Rhydon, seeing as he's 4 times weak to water. But fortunately, we have 2 grass types that ultimately are what lead us to taking down the mutated Greninja. So we later see another mutated starter Pokemon, which is grass-type Blastoise, which at first, when Seadra hears there's going to be a Blastoise, he's excited because he's friends with the Blastoises as he's big into the water-type zone, but this is not a traditional conventional Blastoise, it's a mutated one in grass-type. However, Seadra does later learn an Ice-type move, which helps ultimately take down this grass-type Blastoise mutation, and Seadra feels a lot stronger and better about himself, which is a big theme of this movie. And Rhydon feels very down about his quadruple weakness to grass and water, which is kind of shown by some of his other teammates being grass and water types, and he was initially worried in the very beginning they were going to betray him, but as time goes on, as the journey goes on with this movie, he later realizes that they're on his side and they're his friends, and they develop a good friendship. And Rhydon comes in handy with this next mutated Pokemon, which is a mutated Venusaur, which is a fire type, and a fire type that is super weak to rock because it doesn't have the strongest physical defense, but Rhydon has the strongest physical attack, which makes him also feel even stronger. But unlike Seadra, Rhydon is super confident from the get-go. He's just afraid that the water and grass types are out to get him. And Duwat's sort of the unofficial leader, but Rhydon wants to be the unofficial leader, so they kind of butt heads a little bit. But towards like the middle stage of the movie, sort of Rhydon eventually, accepts that Duwat will be the little leader, and that's until we see Togetic and the grass-type cat fight the water dragon Charizard, and it's mainly weak to fairy types, which Togetic learns some cool fairy type moves that will be exclusive to this movie and maybe in the games if this ever happens, which I sincerely doubt it will. But just for the sake of argument, Togetic uses a new fairy type move and it does a lot of damage to Charizard, water type Charizard, whatever the hell his name is, as a water type, but it's another mutated Pokemon. And also the grass type is finally terrified of Charizards, as it grew up in a hostile environment where there were a lot of fire types threatening to burn down their house that were sent from space above, and Rayquaza and Deoxys did not do the best job at protecting the galaxy from fire types from invading the cat and grass Pokemon. And yeah, later she learns how to take down Charizard, as the second half of the attack is a Leaf Blade and does a good damage because the fairy type and grass type are combined together to take down the water dragon, so it's 2 thumbs up for that. I'm going to conclude this vlog here by giving a little recap of these Pokemon that are super cool, even cooler than their final stage evolutions. And I really enjoyed making this vlog. I think it's a super cool concept, although I did base it a lot off the Marvel Thunderbolts movie and a little bit of Suicide Squad, but I think it works perfectly with these Pokemon. So until then, thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned for more soon. Goodbye.